afternoon, everyone. I am Lewis Stringer, Senior Manager in the UK Network team covering the East and South East Midlands for the British Business Bank. And I'd like to welcome you all today to Financing Your Innovation with Startup Loans. This event will provide startups, entrepreneurs and support agencies in Leicester and Leicestershire with an update on the finance available from the bank's Startup Loans company. The event is being hosted by Leicester Startups as part of Leicestershire Innovation Festival. Established in September 2012, Startup Loans has a mission to help new and early stage UK businesses access affordable finance and mentoring support. Since 2012, it's made over 5,000 loans to businesses in the region to a value of almost £45 million. The last 18 months in particular has seen a significant increase in the number of people both looking to start a business and seeking finance to do so. During this interactive event this afternoon, we will be exploring what you need to understand about the finance and wider support available from Startup Loans, and in turn, what we and our delivery partners look for from a potential applicant. I'm pleased to say that I'm joined this afternoon by an expert panel consisting of representatives from Leicester Startups, First Enterprise Loans, a delivery partner of Startup Loans, as well as a number of businesses that have benefited from the finance and support available. As I said earlier, we are hoping to make this session as interactive as possible. If you would like to ask a question to one or more of our panelists, please drop it into the Q&A chat box and we'll address as many of them as we can with the panelists at the end of the session. Any questions that we're not able to get through during the session, we'll respond to separately after the event, so please make sure you put a question forward. Please also be aware, if you weren't already, that this event is also being recorded and the recording will be shared with you all afterwards. Before I introduce the panel, I'm delighted to welcome our partners for today, Leicester Startups. Sam, over to you.
Thanks, Lewis. And welcome everyone, and we're delighted to be the co-host for this session. So my name is Sam Lark. I'm one of the directors of Leicester Startups Community Interest Company, and about 8 years ago I came across a local entrepreneur who just read Brad Feld's Startup Communities book, and he was inspired to build Leicester's first startup community. It began with a few casual meetups, but later became a LET-funded project managed by Leicester University. And so what do we stand for? Well, we preach give first, which means trying to help entrepreneurs with no immediate expectation of getting anything back in return. We harness the power of peer networks and peer support, pulling founders out of the woodwork. And we're focused on entrepreneur-led bottom-up development of the local startup ecosystem. And we've achieved a huge amount over the last 8 or so years. We've managed to reopen our co-working space, and we try to keep that as a safe area for founders to come together, peer support, shoulder to cry on. We deliver accelerator programs. We've got one going on at the moment, and in fact our demo day is next Friday at 12:30. We run a weekly help desk, a drop-in session. We offer mentoring through our help engine. We have a series of podcasts. We've got thousands of followers on social media. And in the context of today's talk, we focus a lot of our attention on access to finance, but I'll come on to more of that shortly. So yeah, we're committed to delivering all of this free of charge, thanks to further funding from the Let's Biz Gateway, and from other external organisations, and the British Business Bank being one of the extraordinary ones. I really are grateful to Lewis's support. So I'll pause there. If you want to know anything more about what we do, if you visit leicesterstartups.com, it's all on there.
Thanks, Sam, and great to be working with you and supporting all the great work that Leicester Startups are doing. Maybe you can put the website address in the chat function, Sam. That'd be really helpful.
Yeah.
So, to my panel, we've already heard from Sam. Cameron, if you'd like to introduce yourself first, please.
Thank you, Lewis, and hello everyone. My name is Cameron Hassan. I'm from First Enterprise Loans. As Lewis mentioned, we are a major delivery partner for the startup loan scheme. We deliver around about 80% of these startup loans in the East Midlands. First Enterprise we've been set up for over 30 years now. We're a not-for-profit organisation. We deliver business finance for pre-start, new start, or existing businesses. Our funding ranges from £500 and goes all the way up to 250k. All of our funding is unsecured, and yeah, so if anyone needs any kind of funding requirements, please visit our website or get in touch with myself, and we'll be happy to take it from there.
Thanks, Cameron. And maybe if you could put the details in the chat function as well, that'd be really helpful. Stefan, please, welcome. Good morning.
Good morning, Lewis. So I can shortly introduce myself, maybe.
Please do.
So my name is Stefan from Lutzkanov Limited. And what we do as a company is consultancy and technology around sport tech, sport coaching, and in generally supporting sport organization, athletes and coaches in a very different way that most of the other companies have done. We have two separated companies on our own, Sport ERP, which is dealing with business software, primarily again for sport athletes, coaches, and organizations, and Infinite Q, which focus on sport performance and is additional layer also plugged into the Sport ERP. So my personal passion is literally dual career for athletes and coaches and giving their best to actually succeed further forward in changing career and transferring from the sport into the real world or real world out of the sport.
Thanks, Stefan. Look forward to hearing more from you a bit later on. And finally, Sagar, please, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Lewis and Sam, actually, for inviting me in this. So I'm working with the simulator company as a managing director, and also I'm a founder for the simulator company. I'm also the inventor for behind the products. Actually, as you can see in the background, actually, I've got a kit to be tested and I keep playing around with it. Along with that, I do a bit of painting and art and stuff like that. I've worked in the past as a clinical perfusionist and a clinical trainer. And it's absolutely gratifying for us actually to see a lot of patients being supported, or a lot of lives have been saved already because of our products itself. It would not have been possible without the help of British Business Bank and Enterprise Loans. Thank you.
Thank you. Look forward to hearing a little bit more from you as well, Sagar, if you don't mind. Cameron, if I can come to you first, for the audience, in simple terms, what is the Startup Loans Company? Why was it set up back in 2012? And can you give us a sense of the terms and conditions of this particular funding stream? Thank you.
Absolutely. So the Startup Loan Scheme, or the Startup Loan Company, as it was known, was set up originally because finance for business is difficult, full stop. But finance for new startups is, well, near enough to say impossible. If you've not been trading for 2 years with a solid trading history, profitable trading history, then banks' appetite for risk hasn't been that great. So and the support out there is a bit spread, or now it's come together a bit more. But back then it wasn't as refined as it was today. So that's why Startup Loans was originally set up, to promote economic prosperity in all the regions, and really help budding entrepreneurs get their hobbies or their businesses off the ground. And so Startup Loans is a really good resource actually for new businesses. It's aimed at businesses who've been trading less than 2 years, although I believe this is about to be changed, but I'm not going to say any more on the matter until it is officially released. But currently it's 2 years. The interest rate is 6%. The repayment term is over 5 years. I would recommend, if anyone does take that loan, they do, if they can, take the full 5 years out, because it reduces your monthly repayments, and there's no early repayment fees, early redemption charges. So feel free to pay the loan off early, but it just reduces your monthly commitments that way and your cash flow position. So that's Startup Loans in a nutshell.
Can you give me a sense, Cameron, of the range of funding that's available? I'm guessing it's lent on a personal basis.
So it is classed as a personal loan for business purposes. So how you do that would be up to your accountant, but usually it's put back as a director's loan. So it will go in your personal credit history. Sorry, could you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, of course. The funding range, how much funding is available on a personal basis?
Yeah. So it's 25k per director. The scheme allows up to 4 directors, so potentially on one business you can get 25k. If you take out, say, 10k as a first loan, you can still take out the remaining 15k as a second loan. The second loan applications are quicker and less stringent than the first one. And you normally you kind of have you keep a record of your trading, obviously, and based on that you could access further funding. And then there are other initiatives by British Business Bank for expansion in later years, which we love to see. Startups then expanding, and then equity finance in the future. So we love to see that growth.
Thanks, Cameron. And I think we've got 2 great examples of businesses that have been supported through startup loans, but by other initiatives as well. And I'm sure we'll talk about that a bit later on. So thank you for that. For those of you that would have got my figures at the start, the average loan is about £9,000 to £10,000 across the region and the country. The region is slightly lower than national average, so most loans are around £8,000 to £9,000. Sam, if I come to you next, we're holding this event primarily as part of Leicestershire Innovation Festival. So what both of us wanted to get across is the fact that innovative businesses, such as the 2 that we have on the panel today, can use startup loans and loan funding as a means to start up and grow and to innovate as well. It's not all about that sexy equity investment, is it?
That's quite right. Yeah. So yeah, it's. I suppose you could think of it as a sort of a linear journey. We advocate for the lean methodology. So, encouraging startups to bootstrap their way towards building a minimum viable product, something that they can test their assumptions on. And thanks to the rise of things like low code and no code, it's possible to do that for next to no cost or even no cost at all. And that, I think, will enable the founder to validate whether they've got a business model at all. And so it acts as a great filter. So if you get traction, this is when a startup loan could be really useful, because the moment you take on bigger debt, seed funding, you'll give away equity. So if you could use the startup loan to build out the back end of your site or buy some software or hardware, enabling you to make that step change, not only are you going to retain, or there's no requirement to obviously give away your equity, you're also, I think, going to demonstrate that you're committed to this, that you've got skin in the game, as it's often called. So and for all the benefits that Cameron talked about earlier, and I'm actually a beneficiary of a startup loan way back when for something that didn't go anywhere, a side hustle, and I can vouch for just how straightforward the process really is. So yeah, it's a natural step to take on the journey to see if you've got something that's worth a bigger investment further down the line.
I didn't know that, Sam. We should have declared an interest, shouldn't we, at the start?
Well, possibly, yeah.
Have you repaid us? Did you repay us?
All repaid. I did exactly as Cameron said. Anyway, it was really simple and straightforward.
Great, that's good to hear. Thank you, Sam. I'll forgive you. So just a supplementary one whilst I've got you. That's all well and good, and that's great, and we're going to have some great messages today, no doubt. But actually, we also both know, don't we, working with startup early stage businesses, that a lot of founders are worried about taking debt because the perception it's a bad thing. For example, why didn't you worry about it?
Well, it's a good question, and we don't, as I said earlier, we don't encourage anyone to take debt on until they've actually got some reassurance. That typically might be growing number of users or ideally customers. And so if you have that, then I think it to some extent de-risks it. The one exception, I think, is hardware. Hardware is hard. And so in my case it was. And so I needed some funding that was relatively straightforward, that came with support, that would give me a proof of concept, a prototype. So yeah, I think it's available if someone has a sense of they've already got something, and that's where we think this should be positioned. It's don't just start with the loan and then think about building the business. Well, you have to do the business plan to get the loan, but try and go as far down the road as possible before you take on the debt. And I think that to some extent de-risks it. But yeah, from my personal experience, it was really straightforward. It was a long time ago, and it came with some fantastic support.
That's almost seamless, Sam, because I'm going to come to Cameron again next, because it's not just about the money with startup loans, is it, Cameron? Startup loans also offer businesses mentoring support as well, from my understanding. Can you talk a little bit about what that mentoring support actually is and how it works?
So, right from the start of your loan, or even before your loan, sorry, all the way to the end, you get assigned a business advisor or an investment manager, and the business advisor essentially holds your hand throughout the entire process, and he won't let you submit your application to the assessor unless you're both happy with it. So that means going through all the documentation, making sure that it's a feasible, marketably feasible proposition that's being put forward, because we don't want to go error, we don't want to stop error. That being said, it's really important to kind of get it right in the beginning. So for example, just your cash flow, doing that one can be an eye opener for many people. It really tells them, is this idea, is it really, is it commercially viable, or it might be more commercially viable than you thought. It's so important to get those trends right, forecast those trends right. Forecasting is guessing really, but it's an informed, educated estimate that you put on, and you're planning essentially for the future to the best of your ability. And that's what the mentor there is to help you do. And also, signpost you to any specific advisory people you might need to speak to. Really kind of assess before it actually goes to the assessor. Make sure that you thought about your idea properly. You thought about what all the support that's available there, and also the advisors tend to have quite good specific industry knowledge and skill. We try and match up our advisors who come from specific industries to those applicants applying whatever industry you're applying from, to kind of give you the best insight into the industry before you kind of apply and take on the debt. So yeah, and then once you've got your loan as well, we do offer post mentoring support. That can be in various kind of forms. But again, we don't say goodbye to you after you've taken the loan from us. We've had many entrepreneurs who stick with us, who we become almost friends with, or more than almost friends. We are friends, and we stay along with them in the journey, whether it's us that's going to help them or whether we signpost them to someone else who can help them. It's important to build that network, and a lot of the times we are the start of that network, and which we'd love to help you build. And yeah, so mentoring kind of encompasses all of that, and it's very, very important. Great. Especially for startups.
Thank you, Cameron. Both yourself and Sal have mentioned support, and I think the statistics show that it's hard enough setting up and running a startup business and being successful over the short period of time. Your ability to be successful and to survive is massively improved by taking support. Very, very briefly, Cameron, because I'd like to move on to our two entrepreneurs. Can you also talk about the various tools that are actually on the Startup Loans website? Because I came across these as part of my prep for today, and there's some great tools and some great advice and guidance on the website as well, isn't there?
If you go on the website, you'll first of all, you'll find the templates that are available to you, the business plan, the cash flow forecast, personal survival budget, and such. There's some also great guidance documents on there, and as well as some great articles and blogs to help you kind of work out your cash flow, or how to write your business plan. Obviously, your mentor and an advisor will help you with that as well, but there's some self-support there as well for you to access as well. So certainly you should have a look at that.
Great, thank you, Cameron. Okay, so we've painted a glorious picture of success and harmony. Let's move on to the entrepreneurs. I'm sure that will continue. Stefan, you've told us a little bit about the company. What I'm particularly interested in is how you came across Startup Loans and why you felt Startup Loans was the right funder for you. So can you talk to us a little bit about that and how the finance and support offered has supported the setup of your business?
Thank you, Louis. Of course. So actually, Sam said something very important for me as an entrepreneur, and this is about the lean development cycle, validation of the problem, validation of the solution, and understanding when exactly to move to the investor stage. And I've been always keen believer that this is the right approach to go forward. So for me, at the time when I started building the first MVP solution for especially the sport ERP and looking at the opportunities, validating clients, then I realized that I need support, and it wasn't just about the cash flow and everything else that I wanted to move forward, build licenses, software, and so forth. It was also about the consultancy. So I actually, if I value that, probably is even bigger support than just the money itself, because the value I got from especially our consultant, who I can easily say, if it's okay, who it is, I was really, really pleased to work with him. And it was actually in one point invaluable solutions that I followed afterwards. It wasn't just about the finances. It wasn't just about that. It was much more than that. And afterwards, I also came back to him for more help on other solutions as well, which was really, really great. So I think from entrepreneur point of view, is both of those things, and understanding the model that we're working with, proving that model, that support is really, really precious.
Okay, thank you, Stefan. That's really helpful. Cast your mind back and please be honest, please. How was the application process? What did you have to do to apply? And was it as simple as Sam suggested?
So actually, it was even simpler than that, because the first application was through the startup loan website directly, and it was very, very straightforward application. It wasn't, I think, literally took me less than 10 minutes to do that, maybe a little bit more. Then immediately I got in touch with our business advisor, who was helping us with the rest of the application. And that was actually very, very also straightforward process, simply because it was completely guided by him. It was the things that we needed to complete it, forecast everything, but also the suggestion and the things that he was guiding was also very, very, very helpful.
Okay, that's good news. I'll turn to Sagar. Hopefully your views are the same or different. Tell us a little bit about the process of applying for startup loans. What does it look like for you? And in hindsight, what would you have done differently now you know the process and you've gone through it?
Yeah, I think the process is pretty much similar actually to what Stefan said. It was initially it was pretty straightforward and easy. But again, that easy is something that came up with actually finding answers to the question. So yes, you might find initially it was a little bit like the questions were asked by the business advisor, and then I had to find out all the answers. The reason why we actually initially I was a bit struggling, it was just because all the ideas were into my mind, and we had to put it into a paper and actually present it to get the loan. And actually that was really, really helpful. And I can say it was Suhail actually, who was the business advisor, who helped me, who guided me actually in the whole process. And it was very, very, very helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so helpful having somebody to talk to, because I know that's one of the big issues increasingly in the way that we work when we work virtually, is there's still a need to actually speak to somebody. What would be your advice, therefore, having gone through it, to anybody in the audience, a potential applicant that wants to apply startup loans? What would you recommend as a good starting point, preparing yourself for an application?
Yeah, I think if I look back and actually what thing I could have done differently, and I think what I would suggest to potential applicants is to be realistic in making business plans and making sure you know your market. And I did quite a lot of trial runs initially before we launched, or before we even thought about starting up a company. And so then we actually approached the British Business Bank, actually, in fact, enterprise loans for the startup loans and stuff. So my suggestion is to be very realistic in making business plans and making sure you know your market. Another piece of advice is actually do not get frustrated with the questions you asked, because trust me, they are worth it. They will test you to see your time, money, and you'll be investing actually in your business idea is worth it. And I would definitely recommend actually anybody, any startup or anyone actually thinking of starting up a business and looking for financial support and mentoring. startup loans is really good.
Great. Thanks, Sagar. I'm going to come back to you and Stefan and ask you what the future holds in a bit, so just bear with me. Cameron, there's some questions in the chat, if you can have a look at those and answer them. But before you do that, I'm going to throw a question at you if you don't mind. Had some great messages from Stefan and Sagar there. What makes a good application as a delivery partner? What sort of things are you looking for in an application which makes it easier for you? And again, I'm going to ask you the same question. How can businesses and individuals prepare themselves as part of that process?
Firstly, just thank you to Stefan and Sagar. I'm sure your advisors would be overjoyed to hear your feedback. So what can you do to prepare for an application? I think first of all, look into your creditworthiness. You might be surprised by what you find. You might not be. Hopefully, you won't be. But we will ask for a credit report anyway as a first instance, just to make sure we're not wasting your time. And in terms of credit score, we don't look at your score, but we do, and we're not that strict on the credit worthiness, but we do look out for certain things. For example, have you had more than 4 defaults in the last 3 years? Are you with any debt management companies with multiple debts? Do you have any CCJs or IVAs, anything like that? So flag that up in the beginning, have a look at that. Send that over to us before you even apply. We'll talk you through that, and try and find a solution if there are any issues there. So that would be one of the first ones. Second, all your personal finances. Before we start looking to the business, your personal finances, we will ask for a personal statement of affairs, which is essentially your survival budget, your incomes and expenditures. We appreciate that as you're starting a business, these might change. You might need to tighten up in some places, but we do look at what your current situation is, and then obviously plan for your business. You want to look at what when we're looking for an application, we're looking at what of the revenue stream is very important to us. So how are you going to get that revenue stream? Is it realistic and achievable? The figures that you put in front of us, if you put some wild figures in front of us, we will be questioning that. We will be questioning, have you thought about this really? So if you're putting wild figures out there, do you even have the capacity to deliver that? Even with all the demand in the world, can your shop or can your unit, can it take that kind of level of demand? Is there that level of demand? If I would also suggest, say if you've got like a takeaway or something, stand outside and a couple hours, look at the footfall in that area, look at the population demographics, do whatever desk-based research you can, whatever field-based research you can, really do your homework. And this is not just for the loan application. This is your business at the end of the day. You want it to be a sustainable business. So we're looking at revenue stream. We're looking at your marketing plan. Very, very important. That can make or break a business sometimes. So what level of thought have you put into the marketing plan? And then the operational, your day-to-day operational stuff, like your staffing, what does your bottom line look like? Can you reduce that in any ways? And so yeah, there's lots of things we look at, but in all, is it really is the proposition you put in front of us realistic and achievable? And have you identified any gaps in the market? Very important. If you have, our assessor will love that. That gives you a step up on your competition. And talking about that competitive advantage, so anything you think that you have an advantage over your competitors, put that in your business plan, shout about it, make a point of it, put it in your marketing plan as well. Really focus on that. And obviously on top of that, any unique selling points you might have, really shout loud about that and make a point of it, because that's what's going to differentiate you from your competitors. So yeah,
that's really helpful. Thanks. That's a great summary. If I can ask you, to address some of the questions in the chat whilst I go to the panelists, that'd be really helpful. There's some very specific ones, and then maybe you can have a conversation outside of today's session with some of those as well. Sam, I'm going to come back to you. You gave a great summary of what Leicester Startups is, what it does in terms of support. What other supports out there in Leicester and Leicestershire that can support these businesses? Obviously, the world ends with startup loans, but it doesn't. What else is available to businesses that are looking for funding or looking for overall support?
Yeah, so that's a good question. There's quite a lot, and it's a moving target depending on what funding's available. So our default position is to point people towards the Leicestershire Enterprise Partnerships Biz Gateway. Bit of a mouthful, but it's a great resource. It really is, and it's well managed. And on there, you will find a wealth of information from projects or programs that they funded, but also lots of other organisations that work locally, regionally, nationally. So some great examples would be, so universities, for example, they often provide great support. We've got people from DMU and Leicester on the call today. Innovate UK as another example. Nottingham Business Ventures, First Enterprise, of course, and we just heard from Cameron. So there really is a wealth of support out there. I would, if someone is starting out for the first time, in addition to talking to First Enterprise, I would highly recommend going to the LEP Biz Gateway's website, and I'll put the link in the chat whilst you're moving on to someone else's list, because there's it's just, I can't say it's an exhaustive list because it changes, but that for me would be the best starting point.
And again, Sam, you don't need me to tell you this, but you might surprise yourself with your level of knowledge in terms of what's going on there. So I would suggest that actually Leicester Startups is a great place to go as well for signposting, of course.
Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, so just, I mean, we've developed a funnel for startups working in the innovation space. And I talked about it starts with the help desk, or can start with the help desk, leading on to contacts within our help engine. And then really what we offer is our accelerator program. So thanks for reminding me on this.
No problem at all. Stefan, I'm going to come back to you. Had a great story at the start. I'm now interested to know a little bit about where the business is now. What other support and funding you've accessed beyond startup loans as part of that funding journey. And again, let's talk about debt again, because apologies to keep mentioning it. You didn't seem to be too concerned about taking on a loan. Was there any particular reason for that? Is it blind confidence, or was it more than that?
I really hope it's not blind confidence.
Me too.
Yes, exactly. So, but I'll come back from that one. So, starting with the startup loan, building up the first MVP, going forward, creating traction, understanding more and more the problem was very, very helpful in the beginning. Then, of course, it came to the point of, do we really want to move forward to a higher tempo, something that could create even higher traction or use that demand that we saw in the market? And that's where I've also approached again the First Enterprise and move forward with recovered loan to the extent that we were in a situation where COVID was a big factor for us, for the sales, and that was coming to, I won't call it to an end, but specific demand that we couldn't anymore serve if we didn't get more support. And that was a secondary, again, very beautiful help from the First Enterprise, and especially on the consultancy. I'll put again a special focus on the consultancy because it makes a difference. It really does from a startup point of view. I'm not saying it because of the money or anything else. It's more what it makes the difference. This has pushed us now to the extent that we are actually being approached by VC companies, 2 of them, and we're discussing equity finance and so forth. But that wouldn't be possible if the MVP was not there. It wouldn't be possible if we didn't build to that extent. Now it's a whole lot of question. Do we really want to move it right now? But it's up to us. Now we have the opportunity. But until now, that wasn't at all a question. And that, I think, is the kind of the entrepreneurship point. When that value or that valuation of the company becomes significant, it's very, very different situation if we really just pre-seed and you push it, or co-invest or whatever we can pull of our pockets. And it's very different when that MVP is already existing, because the value of that company suddenly jumps significantly on the top. And I was actually quite surprised myself as moving that forward to really see a valuation of one of the VCs to us as a product, as a company, because I definitely did not expect that to be that high. I thought it's much less than my expectation, which I only say possible. And going to the second question, is the debt always ideal? I would probably say no. It's always great to have better opportunities to fund. But when it comes to risk, is about where is the lowest risk and the highest value creation. So for me, if I have a chance to move to even debt equity first to develop an MVP that is with way higher valuation, I see a greater value for me as an owner, because my actual resources will be multiplied tenfold compared to right now selling something that I believe it will have much higher valuation. And I have a kind of a record to see why that will have much higher valuation. So it kind of makes it very logical choice as a bootstrap, and probably one of the logical first choices of bootstrapping. I hope it makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. That's a great explanation, Stefan. Thank you so much for that. I had the pleasure of being at the launch of Leicestershire Innovation Festival on Monday. And actually, what's really interesting, there was a speaker from Innovate UK, and actually, you're in Loughborough, aren't you? Which is a great location for a, dare I say, a sports tech business, obviously. But again, like a large areas of Leicestershire, a great place for Innovate UK to support innovative businesses. So I'm going to put you on the spot. You're being recorded. I'll come back to you in a couple of years. What does the future hold? How far can you go? How far do you want to go?
That's a big question. So I would say the problem very visionary and also very focused on the present. So sometimes as owners, we have that kind of hard time to combine both of them. I believe they're combinable. I believe in that kind of duality of, keeping very optimistic, of very focused on the visionary long term, but also being extremely realistic and meet the brutal facts of reality we're right now. Not always easy, but I think it's necessary to learn that. So for me, next step is I really want to target a way bigger scale. I want to build that consistent traction to the business that it's not just self-manageable. I want to reinvest them in completely another type of businesses. So right now, Lutz Limited and pushing the Sport ERP Infinite Q is completely another level for us, because at the beginning it was just about us. Now we have 2 other companies, and potentially, hopefully we have 2 investors that comes on board of those companies, and then moves us to completely another scale. And if we meet in 5 years, I'll be really happy to hold one of the large SaaS companies into the space and helping sport athletes, coaches, and companies and organizations to move to completely another situation, optimizing, digitalizing them, giving them something that is very precious, and also optimizing their resources to the extent that they could see credible value in that one. I think I would love to be in that space in 5 years from now.
Okay, I've written that down. I'll be back. I'll put a diary note in. Thanks, Stefan. And I'm sure you'll get there. I have every confidence. Sagar, if I can move to you as well. What other support and finance have you taken? Has the simulator company taken? Have you followed a similar journey to Stefan? And also, I'm going to ask you the same question. If I come back to you in 5 years, where's TSC going to be?
Yeah, good question, actually. In fact, I was thinking when I was just listening to Stefan's answers, and I wish actually I had different answers and different experience than him. But it was amazing, actually, being the support what we have got from startup loans and enterprise loans. Yes, so answering your question about different support mechanisms which we have accessed, so we, after our startup loan, actually, we had to, so when I took the startup loan, I was actually partly working on a day job kind of a thing, but to go full time on this role, I had to actually knock the doors again to the enterprise loans and apply for enterprise loan, actually. That completely changed my life and the way what we are standing right now, or what we are doing is like the main, what do we say? It's all because actually we got the loans at the right time. And we got the real right support actually from enterprise loans, First Enterprise and British Business Bank. So that was really helpful. And then also the mentoring support, actually, what we received from First Enterprise was just amazing. So that was really, really helpful. We also have accessed different other like non-financial business supports as well, like AHSN, WAPG, Manufacturing Growth Program, Business Gateway, so the Biz Hub, Business Gateway Growth Hub, and Department of International Trade also has been very supportive to us for any questions or anything. Also, we received some financial support from or financial grants from Medilink East Midlands. So that's the innovation grant. So answering your question about the future of the simulator company, we so at this point of time, we already have started supplying or shipping products actually abroad. And our future, I think what we think is we want to be into every center around the world who is interested in a therapy called ECMO therapy. I've been a trainer on that therapy actually for almost 15 to 20 years. And that's, so we want to be supporting the centers who are actually interested in that therapy or doing the therapy on patients, and to get the better patient outcomes. So we want to be global, more strongly global, in the next 5 years in almost every center in the world.
Great, thank you very much. There's a couple of questions in the chat function. Cameron, there's a couple of technical ones that you may want to have a look at first. But before we go to that, and before we finish and go to the Q&A, can I ask each of the panelists just a final question? One piece of advice, is that infamous last one piece of advice question that you would give to the audience that may be looking at a startup loan as their first option or an option to grow their business. So we're looking for a piece of advice, if you don't mind. Stefan, what would be your one piece of advice? I can stretch to two if you've got to.
I think understanding what really demand from market point of view, external, internal, is really, really important. So, naturally that links quite a lot with what Sam mentioned before, understanding the cycle, understanding the lean development cycle, understanding the stage where they are, and making sure that you're really in the demand to actually meet that. Not because you're going in debt, but because this will give you the confidence to build and actually go to that MVP stage, and therefore, look for something much greater. The second, I think, is forecast. Generally, forecast is something unpredictable. It's like saying, I believe it's going to get there, but I think the exercise, what I did with Stefan Nees was really, really, really helpful as a business advisor, because, getting into the depth of understanding it makes you think twice. And this is what it's all about. It's not being perfect, but it's being, going to the detail that really matters. And when you reach that detail, then you really start thinking differently. And that exercise is very, very helpful as well.
Thanks, Stefan. Sagar, if I could ask you for one, maybe two pieces of advice that you give to the audience.
Yeah, I think I'll have a little more, if you allow. I think, as my piece of advice actually would be first to understand your market. I know it's a big question for anyone. How would I understand my market? But I would say just test your idea and see what exactly comes up with, like what the results comes up with. As actually Sam said, there are many ways of testing the ideas, and a low-cost testing of ideas is possible. Another thing would be understand your customer needs. So step into your customer's shoes, learn from the experience, learn from what they need, actually learn that what customer would definitely needs. Another thing is actually find solutions for real-world problems. And not problems for the solutions what you're creating. So that's super important. And I think find unique propositions. So I think these are not the one piece of advice, it's actually four, but yeah, I would say this is what we tried and tested before we started the business, or even before we went ahead with financial support from First Enterprise, British Business Bank. So that's super important. Yeah.
Thank you. And Cameron, apologies. So I can limit it to one piece of advice. That'd be really helpful.
What they said. No. Ask for help, even if you think you don't need it. Look for help. Build a network, and look at the people who are doing well and try and replicate what they do. In a nutshell.
Thank you. And Sam, please, if I could leave you with the final one piece of advice.
Yeah, I mean, they've already given you all the best advice, but I'll leave you with a resource instead of advice. One of the biggest mistakes we see startups making is not carrying out proper customer development. So there's a book called The Mom Test. It's American, MOM, Mom Test. It teaches you the right way to talk to prospective customers or users. I'll put the link in the chat if we've got time.
Great, thank you. I'm going to open it up for a bit of Q&A in a moment, but we've had two questions that are sort of similar, and they're around businesses that are looking to do a larger program of R&D spend. It looks like several million before they revenue generate, and I'm conscious with both Stefan and Sagar, we had businesses that were relatively close to revenue by comparison. Those types of propositions, in my experience, are very different from startup loans. They're also very difficult to fund. So funding a pre-revenue business and asking for £2 to £3 to £5 million before you generate revenue, take my word for it, is very difficult. So what my advice to you would be is to bite off small chunks of that journey and look at it from a validation point of view. And I think both Stefan and Sagar have used that validation point as being pretty crucial. Equity markets for pre-revenue seed businesses without a real USP is a very difficult marketplace. But I put my details in there if those two individuals want to come back to me separately. There is a massive issue in terms of doing that, but I can happy to talk that through. But startup loans may be part of that journey, but it's not going to be giving you £2 to £3 million worth of seed funding. That is more an equity play. So I can talk to you about that. My details are in the chat if you want to come back to me. We've got a couple of minutes, but a couple of minutes only for some questions. So if I can ask the panelists to answer these as quickly as you can do. I'm going to aim this one at you first, Cameron, if you don't mind. How long does an application process take? And what is the success rate? Am I wasting my time if I apply?
How long is a piece of string, really? It can be. We go by the speed that you go at. We can turn around, and we have turned around an application in less than 2 weeks. That's where someone's come to us, where they've got the business plan ready, the cash flow ready, to see everything, all the documents are ready. They don't need much changing from our end. The proposition looked good, and we went ahead with it. So, but it can take, it can take more. It can take up to 2-3 months. It depends really on where you are in your journey, and how fast, I suppose, you are. That's not to say you should ever rush, especially when it comes to debt financing. But where are you in your journey right now? So it depends really, anywhere from 2 to 6 or 8 weeks, I'd say.
Okay. Are there any sector differences?
So I mean, no, we tend to offer to the majority of sectors. Some sectors, something that requires a patent or it's a bit more tech heavy, we may need some more time to kind of look at. Whereas your straightforward type of businesses, your builders and your retail shops are obviously easier to look at. But generally speaking, we have the expertise to turn any sector around, with a rough same amount of time, especially for startup loans as well.
Great. And apologies, I cut you short, I think, a little bit. The success rate, please.
So no, absolutely, we won't. That's the last thing we want to do is waste your time. In the first instance, we look at your proposition. That's why we ask for a credit report first. So that would be the first indicator for us to, not look at it if there's any major issues on your credit report. After that, the advisor will look at the proposition and make a snap decision on, and decide whether it's a go or not. So no, we wouldn't want to waste your time. If we say yes, we're taking your application forward, we've already put quite a bit of thought into it. We've already looked into the documents and any information you provided, we've thoroughly gone through them before saying yes, let's proceed. Give us with X, Y, and Z documents. So no, we that's the last thing we want to do is waste anyone's time.
Okay. That's great. Thanks, Cameron. I'm conscious that we're running 5 minutes over. I've failed miserably, but most of you on the panel will know that I regularly do that. So we had a great discussion, so I thought it's more important to run over. So if there are no other questions in the chats, I've put my details on there for those two individuals that were looking for much larger funding asks. So please do come back to me. I'm happy to arrange a chat and talk through the practicalities of such a deal. But it just leaves me to wrap up this afternoon's session, should I say. I just wanted to finish off by thanking all of our panelists this afternoon for giving up their time and being great panelists, both before this afternoon, but also during the afternoon. So Sam, Cameron, Stefan and Sagar, many thanks for sitting in and telling your stories and being so positive, which is always a good thing. Throughout the session, various relevant links have been added to the Q&A chat function. This will also be shared with you together with the full recording after the event. We hope that you found today's session useful. It'd be remiss of me, wouldn't it, if I didn't tell you that we've got a session next Wednesday. and that is around business angel investments. And we've actually got Minerva Business Angels that we're working with alongside Leicester Startups. So please, if you haven't registered, the details are on Leicester Startups website. Same time next week, we'll talk a little bit about equity investment and angel investment for businesses. So it may be more appropriate for some of the audience as well. We wish you and your business every success in the future. And it just leaves me to say good afternoon. Have a great rest of the day. Please keep safe, Storm Dudley and everything. And look forward to seeing you and speaking to you next week. Thank you very much for your time.